Welcome back to Growing Guelph. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Sloggett, and this is the second episode in our three-part series with the Guelph Public Library. Today on the podcast, I'll be joined by Dan Atkins, CEO, and Michelle Campbell, Deputy CEO, for a conversation about the evolving value of libraries in our community. We talk about their journeys into library leadership, how the library decides where to invest its energy, and the exciting ways that they're innovating to meet the needs of Guelph today and into the future. From their strategic plan to the upcoming Central Library, Dan and Michelle share how libraries continue to be an essential public spaces for everyone. This conversation is bigger than just buildings or books. It's about access, community, and why the library remains one of our most forward-thinking public institutions. And with that, let's get right into my conversation with Dan Atkins and Michelle Campbell. Today on the Growing Guelph podcast, I'm joined by Dan Atkins, CEO of Guelph Public Library, and Michelle Campbell, the Deputy CEO. Dan, Michelle, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
This is the second of 3 episodes that we're doing all about the library and the different services and all the wonderful things happening at Guelph Public Libraries. I guess kind of just to jump right into it, how did each of you come to library leadership in Guelph, and what surprised you most about working in this community and institution?
I'll go first. So I was working at the Upper Grand District School Board as a library supervisor, and I was looking for change. I was for many years watching kind of the developments of getting a new central library built in downtown Guelph. So I kind of set my sights on being part of that. I wanted to be part of the planning of it and the execution of this very important project. Luckily, a branch supervisor position opened up back in 2018. I was successful in that, getting that position. And then a couple of years later, I moved here to the main branch to be manager of public service, and then pretty recently took the role of deputy CEO. So, surprised, you asked what has surprised me most about working here. I don't think I was totally prepared for the adventures of working in an urban public library in a very aging building. Mm-hmm. And I'm not actually sure how you could be prepared for it, realistically. Every day is an adventure, and every day is different. For that reason, I feel like I need to be very organized and working always ahead on projects, because you just never know what's going to happen on a daily basis that will take you off task. So
yeah, if the power is going to go out, if the internet's going to go out,
yes,
if a critical building maintenance or system is going to
sewage is a big problem here.
Sewage and books don't mix?
No. Elevator goes down, air conditioning doesn't work. It's all those basic infrastructure things are just failing on us. So
I will say, and this isn't a major complaint, but if I had any major complaint about the Guelph library system, it's that it's very hard to dress for coming here in the winter.
Absolutely.
My wife and I will walk here and we'll have our coats on, and then we get here and it's like, I know that it's probably a matter of like, there's a thermostat in the main floor that's set to one thing, but like, you walk through the aisles and suddenly it's like, oh, we're boiling hot, so now we're holding our jacket or we're putting it in our backpack, and it's always one of those games. I mean, that's just sort of winter in Canada in general, but it seems like especially apparent in the current downtown main library
Dan's
branch.
Been here a lot longer than me, but he's explained it to me like the boiler, it's the original boiler from the original building.
Oh,
so
well, good for whoever made that boiler, I guess.
We're dealing with
that.
pretty old systems, and we can't. It's cold in summer and too hot in winter, and sometimes depending on the floor you're on, it's different. So
this is a total side question. Do either of you know how old this building is?
Yes,
Dan?
Yeah, it was built in 1965, the original building, and then there was an addition that was put on in 1975.
Okay. So I could see it showing its age, and I think it's almost deceiving from the outside because it has that quote unquote like modern kind of look. Like it's got the big windows and everything like that. But I'm excited for the new branch. I live in fairly close to the neighborhood, so it's always kind of exciting to know that there's going to be something new down the street, and just how the library will take advantage of it. I'm also kind of curious to see what will happen to this building. I don't know if that's known or if you guys can talk about it, but I know that that's you probably deal with a lot of questions about like the new library and all that, but we're not necessarily here to talk about the new building and the new library. But actually, before we get into that, Dan, I didn't get a chance to hear your response.
Thank you. So I'm a lifelong Guelph resident. I graduated from GCVI just down the road, and did minor hockey and minor baseball in Guelph. And I went to the University of Guelph, and I always had jobs in sort of public service in high school and the university, and really wanted a career that was going to allow me to continue to serve the public. My grandmother was actually a librarian, and I landed on this career sort of through some conversations with family members. I went to the University of Toronto, and from there I was sort of able to parlay my lifelong residency in Guelph into a job here, and I started in 2006 as a reference librarian, and from there I went on to manage the Bullfrog location, and then to the Westminster location. Then I came back downtown as a director of operations, where I started to manage the building a little bit and manage the budget, and then moved up to the deputy CEO role that Michelle is now in, and in December of last year was put in by the board as the CEO of the Guelph Public Library. So you asked what surprised me most about the career, and I think it's the small impacts that we make every day, and they add up over time. And every day there might be someone in here using a computer, and that might seem like a small interaction, but that half-hour computer use might help that person find a job or get social housing or access some health information. And those types of interactions add up over time. And I think that's the real superpower of a public library, is in those small interactions that add up over time, that, on a whole, when you magnify that on every day, those things happening, and at every library branch, that can transform a city and make cities more resilient and foster community and make cities stronger.
That's such a good point about how critical the library becomes as one of our few remaining true third spaces that are available to the public, that you can exist in, that there's no obligation to buy anything. I might have said this in the first episode, so apologies to anyone who has to hear me repeat things, but my wife and I really enjoy going to the library and scratching a little bit of that itch of everyone's familiar with the joy of going and spending money and coming home and like looking at all the things that you got to buy, but the library lets you sort of scratch that without spending a dime. Obviously everyone pays into the library through our public taxes, including renters, and that renters often will pay their landlords property taxes, so everyone's paying into the library system. But coming here and being able to just indulge in so many different interests and walking home with like books or movies or like some of the other interesting tools, like I've rented a telescope from here, I've rented a carbon dioxide monitor, which was like endlessly fascinating for me for those few weeks I had it. The library is just like, it's more than just that third space that you can exist in. It also is just a gateway to, like you said, so many critical things. For people who interact with the library a lot, it's easy to take it for granted, but it's also so impressive in some ways and so astounding that we have these built-in institutions. If the library didn't, you probably have heard this anecdote before that people have shared recently, but if the library didn't already exist, you can only imagine the uphill battle that it would be to try to convince some members of the public that it would be worth spending money on. And it would just be looked at as like, oh, like, could you believe that like they want to give all of these free things? But it does exist, and a lot of us can appreciate and really value that people like yourselves have dedicated their lives to making this the institution that it is. So thanks to both of you, I guess, for dedicating your careers and your time to making the Guelph Public Library system what it is today.
I think that is the essential value of the public library, is that it is one of the last truly democratic spaces in society. You mentioned you don't have to buy a ticket or purchase a coffee. it's just a place where people can belong. You can just walk in and you're welcome. And that alone makes libraries pretty extraordinary in today's world.
Yeah. So my next question was all about that essential public value. So in your views, what is the essential public value that a library offers that other institutions can't? And in a time of like digital shifts and increasing competition for attention, how do libraries continue to be indispensable?
Really great question. I think as we spoke about this is one of the last democratic spaces, but it goes deeper than that. At its heart, libraries are about access and belonging. One of the things we're working on right now is digital equity. And so, I hear a lot from people about, I can get that on the internet, but what happens if you don't have the internet? And there's a lot of people in this community that don't have access to the internet, and it's becoming more and more expensive to have a connection. And so, libraries can really fill that gap for people and allow people to still contribute to the world and connect with their community. And so that's an area that we've really focused on is digital equity. And at the end of the day, it's really about bringing people together.
Yeah, that's a great point. This is something that just sort of, so neither of you have to have a good answer for this, but I'm aware that a key element that like librarian, and when I say like librarians, like what that those key skills that librarians have is the ability to help people curate and help get access to information, because, the cliche is like, why do I need to go to a library? The internet is the repository of all information. But as we've seen, it's a repository that is often a difficult one to navigate. Like I found like Google has gotten worse as time has gone on.
The internet's not as good as it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because the internet's gone more mainstream. Like it used to be just the nerds curating it, and now, there's a lot more money involved in selectively controlling what actually gets to the people when you're trying to search for something and look something up. There's a lot of money and marketing dollars that are spent that it's not a neutral source of information. And especially in today's day and age, like with AI, we had a little brief conversation about AI tools kind of before we started recording, but the amount of misinformation and just complete unknown like video, audio, whatever, photos that are out there, it's becoming harder and harder to trust what you're given. Like it's no longer just like, oh, I'm seeing this video, therefore that's an accurate representation of the world. And I could really see librarians sort of becoming a key element of like, oh, there's a trusted member of the community that can help curate, I don't want to say just the truth, capital T truth, but like can help be a connection to what's actually important and what you actually want to find out, because I think we're going to just be like wading through an incredible amount of nefarious, questionable material in any internet search out there. Even, a search through, like if you go to like a local Indigo bookstore, how much of that content is going to be AI generated about authors that don't actually exist, about content that like, I don't know. I just see a world where info is going to be cheap and plentiful, but truth is going to be harder to come by. And I could see librarians kind of playing that key role.
We already have started playing that role.
Yeah.
When you speak of AI, we have actually seen content from some of our publishers that are clearly AI generated, and we're learning some key things to look for to make sure that we're not purchasing sort of AI generated material, or we're still purchasing material that's written by real people.
Right. And I could see why librarians would specifically have that as a key tenet of like what's important to them about material that's brought into the library, that someone who's I don't want to throw Chapters Indigo under the bus or anything like that, but they aren't trained in those same skills. And if they are kind of more incentivized to just go with what will sell and what's popular, then they might not have as many qualms about bringing AI generated material into bookstores that will look just the same as something written by a human. And I think people are going to really value that distinction in the future.
Particularly from a local lens, like we do a great deal of we put a great deal of effort into collecting things that are locally created. So we have a collection of all local authors, and that's part of our archive. We try to purchase a title from every local author that's written in Guelph, and so there's no other institution that is collecting that type of literary historical record of the city of Guelph, and so we really see that as one of our key mandates.
That's a good point. 5 years ago, this month actually, I moved back to Guelph, and I got endlessly, it was sort of a pandemic hobby of mine to fully research as much about the history of my house as I possibly could.
Did you use the cooling inventory?
I did. I found my house in that inventory. That was sort of the pathway to everything else I found out about it. And I spent a good number of hours coming to the library and looking through the old city reference materials.
City directories.
The city directories, yeah. My list of all the people who've ever lived in my house came from those. And then...
How far back did you get?
I think I have a pretty complete list, like from the house was built in about 1871 till now. I've got a fairly complete list of everyone who lived there, and then did a bunch of info about the original occupant, and he was a machinist. He ran the machine shop out of the city, and I found a old flyer that was in a business directory that you didn't have a copy of. There's one at the Guelph Museum, but you did have it on microfiche. So I used a microfiche machine for the first time in the basement of the library, and like that was a lot of fun. Amazing. Scrolling through that, and my search could only get me so far online, and coming to like there's still so much that a physical building has, especially when you're looking at Guelph history, because it's like, you've got a lot of really interesting books, as well as maybe the most key point is knowledgeable people that can help you in that journey and in that research.
Well, and historical knowledge too, and so libraries have employed librarians for, well, here 125 years, and they had the foresight to collect that information and preserve it so that it's available today.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky to have it all, and so I think sometimes we take for granted just everything that we have at our disposal, at our local libraries. My next question was around the fairly new. When was the strategic plan published? Is it fairly new?
Yeah. December of 2024.
And it's called From Barriers to Bridges: Becoming a Pillar of Public Value. And that strategic plan articulates a bold vision for the future of Guelph Public Libraries. What were the biggest insights or community voices that drove the framing of that plan?
So we did a pretty robust community engagement with multiple opportunities for feedback. We had street teams and virtual and in-person sessions. We heard from our community, our partners, our board, and our staff. And I think for me, the real insights came from within, from our staff, from our pages, which are teenagers mostly who shelve books, and all the way up to different management team. We heard loud and clear that we need to invest in our team. And that meant for us, we had to start prioritizing training, fostering transparent communication. For example, for us, that means always explaining the why, like why a decision is being made to move in a certain direction or why we're implementing a new process or a piece of software. And most importantly, listening to staff. These internal voices really helped us recognize that to be successful building bridges externally, we had to start with strengthening our internal culture. And the strategic plan reflects our commitment to empowering staff so they can better serve our community and adapt to the evolving needs of the community.
That's good that you were able to take the staff's considerations. I know all the staff members I've ever interacted with it's like to call them like enthusiastic helpers just doesn't do it justice. Like it's such a night and day difference between working with, like if you're out in the world and you're at a brick and mortar store, you'll find the odd customer service person who's like fairly passionate. It usually helps if they have like a stake in the business or they own the business. But the library, like you get the impression that everyone here is like a owner of the library. And you can kind of just see that passion that like, you know, no one goes into the library game to enrich themselves or to like, you know, become wealthy and famous. You can see that people are driven by just the spirit of like wanting to help their community. Absolutely. And if you're already here, boots on the ground, like with a problem to them, like, hey, even if it's a problem, it's just like, help me print this thing or help me figure out this thing online. Like people are just so eager here to help. And that makes sense that staff would drive the you know, future vision and strategic plans. Yeah.
This round anyway. Next time we'll do a new strategic plan in 4 years, and you know, something might rise to the surface different, but building a new central library and having to bring the staff over into an environment that's basically 3 floors and 3 times or almost 4 times the size of the space, it requires a lot of investment in our staff to do that and make it successful. So when we heard that, I think we knew that, but we really heard it loud and clear. We focused on that. Yeah.
And ultimately, it's to your point, it's library staff that make what we do. That is so incredible. Like they're such a large part of how we deliver service, and you know, they every day go above and beyond. And I think your point about you know, we're all owners. We're all citizens of the city, and we're all owners of this institution. The staff who work here, as well as the public who use this space. And I think when you apply that lens to how we deliver service, you're working for the good of the community, and I think that comes across in everything that we do.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. One of that strategic plan's themes is amplify our stories. What does that look like in practice? How do you hope that helps shift public perceptions about libraries and what libraries do?
So to us, amplify our stories means actively collecting and sharing real life examples of how the library positively impacts people. So whether it's someone learning a new skill in the makerspace or discovering a life-changing resource, these experiences are powerful and they are lasting. I like to call them sticky, these experiences, because they stick with you. So we aim to put a face on those stories and share them through our social media, our annual report, and other channels. I think this way of storytelling helps counter the misconception that no one uses libraries anymore. You know, we hear that a lot. By highlighting the personal, the transformative experiences, we're shifting the public perception and showing them that libraries aren't just about books, but they're about people and growth and connection.
I think, not that I think there's a lot of listeners of this podcast who are the type of people who resonate, like the idea of nobody uses libraries anymore. Yeah. It's probably not one that resonates with this audience, but I think that sort of phrasing is a failure of empathy. It's I take that as if the same thing if I read an online comment where someone says nobody uses bike lanes, or you know, nobody goes downtown. I don't go downtown because it's not safe. Like that, and saying that as a quote, I go downtown, but that's someone who they're projecting their own opinion out into the world and trying to act as if they represent everyone when that's clearly not true. First off, go downtown on any given day. It's full of people. It's full of families. It's full of life. Bike lanes are used every single day. If you're not seeing people in bike lanes, you're probably not driving with a lot of awareness, so that's concerning. And the library is always in use, and it's always in use by families and just all walks of the community. I see enjoying and using their time here. So
every day there's a lineup of people to get in at 9 o'clock in the morning.
In my first episode of this library series, we heard about harm reduction and we did a lot of talking about that third space functionality of the library. From your leadership vantage point, how do you balance the library's role as an inclusive gathering place with the pressures for order and safety and the public expectations, especially from people who, like families and longtime users who, are feeling some of that hesitancy about. And I don't think that hesitancy actually applies to just libraries. I think that's just public space in general. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think one of the really interesting challenges for libraries today is balancing that idea of a third space with the need for order. Mm-hmm. We want the library to become a place outside of the home and work where people can come together and feel welcomed and connect with one another. At the same time, we're increasingly taking on a role in harm reduction and making sure people who are struggling or who might not have a safe place to go feel supported and respected. Some people might wonder how that works alongside safety and rules. And the truth is, it's all about balance. Creating a welcoming and supportive space doesn't mean letting go of structure. We have clear policies. We have an acceptable use policy. We have well-trained staff who can respond with empathy while maintaining a safe environment. At the end of the day, we spoke about this already, but we're a democratic institution, and everybody is welcome here, and everybody is a community member. And some people might have a different type of challenge, but provided people are following our acceptable use policy, which really boils down to be respectful of other people trying to use the space. Mm-hmm. Everybody is welcome here, and there's no need to purchase anything. Everybody is welcome here.
Yeah, it almost feels like to people who have complaints about a quote from a made-up person, but the idea of there's a certain amount of people that make me feel uncomfortable at the library. They're asking for gatekeeping, and it's there's a lot of places in the world that will happily gatekeep that places for you. If you want to join a private country club, if you want to go spend money at some place that will cut out people who don't have that kind of money. Mm-hmm. And I think people want to turn a blind eye to members of our society that make them uncomfortable, and because they are uncomfortable with the fact that our society has those issues in it, right?
And I would say that those people, in quotation marks, mm-hmm. are using the library the same way that I would use the library. They're checking their email, they're charging their phone, they're using the public toilets, they're sitting and relaxing, and they're meeting friends and engaging in community.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they don't want to be reminded that people who are, down on their luck exist. And sometimes public spaces, that's how I sometimes take some of those complaints where I see where people are I don't want to go downtown, I don't want to go to the library. And it's you want to turn a blind eye, and you want to kind of be willfully ignorant that your society has that in it. And if you really wanted to be part of the solution, there's a lot of great organizations in the city that are doing things to help people in those sorts of situations. But those people still exist. If you cast them out from all of your public institutions, they still exist.
And they're a part of our community.
Yeah, and they're a part of our community. They are Guelphites. They are just as much of a Guelphite as you or I. I kind of said before that people, if you're renting, you're still feeding into property taxes one way or another, because a lot of landlords are paying their property taxes through their tenants. But paying property taxes is not an admission to being a citizen. You're a citizen if you live here in Guelph. Some of us live in houses, some of us live in trailers, some people live in their cars, and some people live on the street. We're all still living, and we're all still here, and we all, I think, still deserve institutions like the library.
Hear,
hear. Modern libraries host a vast array of functions, from technology access, literacy, community programming, meeting spaces, historic archives. How do you decide where to invest more deeply, and how do you handle that tension between innovation and continuing to sustain core services?
Great question. Libraries are great record keepers. It's our job, and so we have a great deal of statistics on how things are being used, and we monitor those things very closely. And we're constantly adjusting what we're doing, what we're purchasing, and how we're delivering service. I would suggest that we innovate our core services. An example of that is ebooks, or we have online streaming services. We used to circulate a whole bunch of DVDs, and while we still circulate some DVDs, that has shifted online. We have a service that allows people, similar to Netflix, to use their library card to stream content. And so we're constantly innovating with our core services, and we're constantly looking at the value and the return on investment that we're getting out of the investment that we're making.
That's a great answer. I don't have any follow-ups. I think that sounds like a lot of consideration is being put into ensuring how the library keeps maintaining the functions that the past century or so have society has come to put into the library and demand of libraries, but also kind of keeping that forward thinking about how we keep progressing as society, and new technologies give new opportunities for the library.
And we're also willing to experiment, like the telescope that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a cool idea for the library to loan a telescope. And we have a whole host of other types of, we call it the library of things.
And they're not all physical, right? Like you can get passes to public parks.
You can get passes to public parks, to museums, knitting needles, carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide detectors. We have radon detection, and some of these things are even donated by the community. So the radon detectors were provided by by public health, and so we loan them. We have a partnership with the Upper Grand District School Board where we loan Chromebooks, and far be it from me to talk about that. That was a program that Michelle actually designed when she was at the school board, but it's not just about books. It's about everything that the community needs.
Mm-hmm.
I think the makerspace is a really good example of trying
great
something
idea.
new too. We have a makerspace at our Westminster branch.
Yeah, I haven't used that space. I think I've been to every branch in the city, but tell our listeners a little bit about that makerspace.
Yeah, so it's for hands-on learning.
Mm-hmm.
We have different types of technology. We have laser printing, engraving, cutting. We have 3D printing. We have embroidery. We're starting up sewing as soon as well. We have a Cricut machine, which is useful for scrapbooking or cutting out shapes with vinyl and other types of fabrics. We have an audio video recording studio, which you could do podcasting in. You could do music recording, green screen. We have a gaming space for video gaming, and really wonderful, amazing staff that help people learn something new that they've never tried before, that they probably, most of us couldn't afford to try and, purchase that equipment for our home. And it gives you a chance to, we don't charge anything for it, so it gives you a chance to try it out. And we've had people come away from those types of experiences with creating a career out of something they learned in the makerspace. So we're going to take that prototype that we did at the Westminster branch, and we're going to make it pumped up, I guess, a pumped up makerspace, everything we have at Westminster and more for the new Central Library. So
That's
that'll
very
be
cool.
really exciting. Yeah.
I think it just kind of goes to show that the classic view is libraries being a place of a collection of books, and it's that's true because the books used to be one of our best ways of storing information, and books were how you would access skills and things like that. But obviously, as our ways of encoding information into new forms like CDs and audiobooks, and then like you had talked about, the access to streaming services, and now we have these new tools in the last couple dozen of years, like the 3D printers and the Cricut tools and engraving. The library's keeping up with all those things. We have all these new systems of people connecting to information, and the library's right there, lockstep with providing that to the public.
I think that's a great point. I mean, that's something that we're actually looking at. We've had some conversations this week around AI and how the library can serve as a public educator with AI. And so we've talked with some of the supervisory team here about building a an AI task force to really look at, what is the library's role with this emerging technology, and how we can help the wider city sort of understand the impact of that.
That's a good point. I mean, we kind of talked before about how some of the other companies that have taken the place of the library in some of the modern zeitgeist, like Google, for example. Well, like, I've been very disappointed with Google lately because I get all sorts of ads on YouTube, which Google owns, Alphabet owns, that are clearly AI created ads that are using like Mark Carney, that are using other like distinguished members of the public, that are putting words in their mouth and giving people like, selling some crypto investment opportunity. Right. I've gotten those myself, and I've seen headlines just this week that like residents of Guelph have been scammed out of money because Google doesn't vet who can put ads on their system. If you throw money at them, they'll just let you serve your malicious ad to anyone you want. And, Google might have been once a very powerful tool to connect to information, but I think right now it's a very powerful tool that's being used to connect to all sorts of malicious information, like information that doesn't just not inform you, it purposefully misinforms you. And I think it's where people will start looking towards libraries as institutions of truth and institutions that actually have a stake for the public, like a stake for people's well-being and public good. Over the past couple of years, are there any usage trends or community feedback that have surprised or challenged your assumptions about library needs?
Yeah, I think we've touched on some of this, but one of the most surprising shifts has been the surge in demand for the non-traditional items. So disc golf sets, Ontario Park passes, Wi-Fi hotspots, technology kits. These things that are like beyond books, or we call them the library of things, offerings have shown us that the library is increasingly seen as a resource for experiential learning, recreation, and digital access, and not just reading. We've also seen remarkable growth in our program attendance, especially among adults and seniors, which challenged our assumption that programming was primarily for children. Workshops on digital literacy, genealogy, creative arts have drawn diverse audiences, reinforcing the library's role as a lifelong learning hub. Your other podcast touched on this that you did recently with staff here. Another eye-opener has been the community's embrace of our harm reduction initiatives, including naloxone training for staff, our Brave sensors in our washrooms. These efforts reflect a deeper truth that the library is not just a place for information, but it's a safe, responsive space for public health and social support. And we've talked about this as well, but we've seen unexpected shifts in how our community engages with the makerspace. It's totally exceeded our expectations, I think, showing a strong appetite for hands-on learning and creative exploration. So these evolving needs, it reminds us that the libraries must always be agile, empathetic, and community-driven. We're listening, we're learning, we're adapting, because the library belongs to everyone in the community, and its future is shaped by people who use it.
Well said. So access and belonging are obviously like central to the mission of the library. What initiatives, either like ongoing or upcoming, are aimed at reaching populations or neighborhoods that are currently underrepresented in library usage, and how do you like measure success in that space?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of initiatives. For our bookmobile service and our visiting library service, we bring the library to seniors' homes, daycares, schools, and other community organizations. We've seen growing interest from groups asking us to visit more often, which to me signals strong community demand. We're also working on a youth programming strategy for ages 12 to 16. Our youth are navigating a complex, changing world, and the library has a unique opportunity to provide them with safe spaces, creative outlets, and leadership pathways. So we know we're going to have a dedicated teen space coming up in the new Central Library. It's positioned close to the makerspace. So we believe that we have an opportunity to become a leader in youth engagement in Guelph, helping teens thrive, belong, and tell their stories. You asked about how we measure success. I mean, traditionally we measured success by attendance or circulation numbers, but we've kind of moved more into depth of engagement, like how often people return to us, how they interact with staff and our services, and how these initiatives help foster a sense of belonging and trust. So really it's asking, how does the public library improve your daily life?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's so much more in that data than that you could, like, there's so much qualitative data that just measuring the pure quantitative, like how many things rented out, how many times did someone step into a building, like that just misses some of those details of what were the actual experiences like. And you have to dig a little deeper and you have to spend a little more time to at that data, but it's clearly well worth looking into.
The Toronto Public Library, who has a much larger budget than we have, just released a new study on the social impact of libraries, and so they're trying to measure the social impact. And so, the example is, 5,000 people attended a concert. Well, that's great that 5,000 people attended a concert. How did those 5,000 people feel at the concert? And that's really at the heart of how libraries are now trying to measure. We're still grappling with that a little bit, but that's really the future of sort of how we're going to measure our success is the actual social impact that we can make.
Mm-hmm. So we've kind of talked a bit about this new central library, but when that new central library opens, how do you see it expanding or shifting the library's capacity for impact beyond just, the obvious, adding more space and amenities? And we've kind of already answered some of these, or you've already answered some of these questions, but is there anything that we haven't talked about in terms of what kind of programming partnerships or identity that you hope it enables?
Yeah, when we talk about the new library, we don't really want to talk about it as a building with books and programs. We like to think of it as social infrastructure, the same way that a rec center or a park, the library sort of belongs in that same conversation. And it's our hope that the new space will fully embrace that role. As we spoke about, the library is a place where no matter people's backgrounds or their incomes or their life story, everyone belongs, and we want our programming to reflect that. That might look like a cultural celebration that brings neighbors together, or programs that support digital literacy or job readiness, or simply space where people can gather informally, meet someone new, and feel part of the community. It's also about resiliency. Communities face challenges, whether that's economic shifts or public health crisis, or even just everyday stresses that people carry. Libraries can be an anchor institution in those moments by offering access to information, resources, and wellness supports. We can help people in their communities respond to the challenges with strength and compassion. And finally, libraries are about equity. Libraries can really level the playing field. Not everyone has equal access to technology and education, or even a safe public space. A public library is open to everyone, and that's really a powerful statement of the type of city that we want to be.
I mean, it's interesting, the current main library branch, the building we're sitting in right now, you said it was built in the early 1960s. So it was really built and designed and made for a very different century. It was, just after the World Wars, and the 20th century feels like a long time ago. It feels in some way like longer than it actually was, like temporally, because of just the vast changes that we've had to our society. And with this new space, you're able to, from the ground up, design a space that's built for the needs of the 21st century. We're now 25 years into this new century, and like, what are the needs of the next 75 years of the 21st century going to be? We won't really know, but we at least have a bit of a taste. We know more now than we did in the 60s. So that's...
And above all else, we have the resource of space.
Yeah.
We have the space that the community is able to use in however they choose to use it.
It's almost exciting, too, that it's even more central to, like, within being in the downtown core. Like, we're in the downtown core now, but we're just on the periphery, I'd say on the periphery of the downtown, and the new space being kind of even more centrally located is exciting.
Absolutely. And if you look at other developments, other central libraries across Canada, Halifax, Calgary, Edmonton, they had a profound impact on the community in terms of bringing business downtown. That's one of the real superpowers of a library. We get 500,000 visitors a year through these doors. And, we're on the periphery now, but if those people, come downtown and buy a coffee, do some shopping, take public transit, ride their bikes, that can have a profound impact on downtown.
Yeah. Also, my other favorite library that isn't part of the actual official library that I did another episode on, the Tool Library is also downtown at
Absolutely.
the Quebec Street Mall. And I know they're not officially part of the library system, but clearly they're also playing in that space of, what modern people are looking for and bringing community together and things like that.
And we work closely with the Tool Library. We've done some joint programming together as well. So
I always like to kind of see that like the two, the unofficial library and the official library sort of working together is always heartening to see. My last question for both of you, if you could offer a message to every Guelph resident, not that I reach every Guelph resident, but if you could offer a message to them, especially those who maybe rarely use the library or question its relevance. We've been kind of talking around those people and that idea this whole time, but what would you want them to know about why the library matters now and in the years ahead?
I think in my last question, I spoke about social infrastructure, but really when I think about it, the library is critical infrastructure. The library is like a road or a sidewalk or a sewer. We are important to the city for a host of different reasons that we've gone over. And, as Guelph grows, the library will grow with it. And whether it's digital literacy or cultural connection or simply a safe space to belong, that's the library's role in the community and making Guelph a great place to live.
Yeah, I think if you believe that libraries don't provide value, you haven't visited a modern public library. I was talking to somebody at a dinner party recently, and he asked what I did for a living, and when I told him, he said, "I don't think enough people realize that Guelph Public Library is the best bang for your buck." And I said, it's true. The return on your investment for your tax dollars is significant. As times become more difficult economically, the library's here for you. You don't need to keep on buying books and music or streaming services. We have it all here for you at the library, so give us a try.
Yeah, well, those are great messages to leave people. And I think, too, comparing it to the infrastructure that we take for granted that a modern city needs, we need a sewer system, we need access to running water, we need electricity. The library is the access to so many of the information that it's now just not a luxury or in addition to everyday life. It's critical for functioning in everyday life. And as the world gets more complicated, as AI continues to get more complex, as the sort of skills that people need to access jobs gets more complex, the needs get more complex, and you really need an institution like the library to help be the connector to those things, right? Those things aren't just added luxuries anymore. They're essential for thriving in the modern day, and that's what you guys are doing. So thank you so much, Dan and Michelle, for sitting down, having this conversation. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
It was great.
Thanks for listening to Growing Guelph. I've been your host, Jordan Sloggett. Be sure to subscribe to us on social media, on your favorite podcast app, and if you have a recommendation for a future guest you'd like me to speak to, you can reach out to me at growingguelph@gmail.com.